What if credit cards were banned worldwide? It's not something most of us think about, but the idea could completely change the way we live, work, and even think about money. Right now, credit cards are everywhere. People use them for buying almost anything, from groceries to gadgets and for paying bills. They're quick, easy, and for some, it's hard to imagine a world without them. But what would happen if we suddenly couldn't use them anymore? What would we do if we had to find another way to manage our finances? First, let's think about how much we depend on credit cards. For millions of people, credit cards are a lifeline. They make it easier to buy things when you don't have enough money at that moment. They allow people to travel without carrying huge amounts of cash, or even help with emergency situations where a quick payment is needed. If credit cards were banned, everyone would need to find another way to pay for things. It would be like going back to the days before credit cards, when cash was king. But here's the catch. Most people don't carry large amounts of cash with them anymore. So, without credit cards, we'd need to think of other ways to pay for things, like mobile payments or digital wallets. Now, imagine how businesses would feel if credit cards were no longer an option. Big stores, small shops, and even online retailers rely heavily on credit card payments. Without them, they'd have to adjust fast. A lot of businesses already offer other payment methods like mobile payments or even PayPal, but these systems also require technology and infrastructure to work. It could be tough for small businesses that don't have the resources to switch to these new systems. Some might even struggle to survive without the ease of credit cards. But it's not just businesses that would be affected. What about banks and financial institutions? Credit cards are a huge part of their business. The banking industry makes billions of dollars every year just from credit card interest, fees, and transactions. If credit cards were banned, they'd lose out on a big chunk of their revenue. To make up for this, they'd likely push other forms of loans, like personal loans or payday loans, which might not be as easy to get or as widely available. And while some people might benefit from these loans, others could find themselves in even more financial trouble than before. If credit cards were banned, people would also have to reconsider how they manage their finances. With credit cards, people have access to instant credit, which can lead to debt if not managed properly. Without them, we'd have to rely more on savings and budgeting to make ends meet. This could lead to a healthier financial system for some people, but it would also be harder for others who rely on credit to make large purchases or pay for emergencies. The fact is, credit cards allow people to buy things that they can't necessarily afford right now, but they also make it easy to overspend and end up in debt. So, what would happen to the economy if credit cards were banned? In one way, it could help reduce consumer debt. Credit card debt is a massive issue in many countries, especially in places like the United States, where people often rack up debt without realizing it. With no credit cards, people might be more careful about how they spend money and stick to their budget. On the other hand, the economy could take a hit because credit cards help drive consumer spending. Without easy access to credit, people might spend less, and businesses could struggle. When people buy less, it affects the economy as a whole. What about international trade? Credit cards are often used to buy things from overseas, especially online. If credit cards were banned, it might make international shopping more difficult. People might have to use other payment methods like bank transfers or cryptocurrency. But not everyone is familiar with these options, and many people might not trust them as much as credit cards. It could make global trade slower and more complicated. Travel would also change. Many people rely on credit cards to pay for flights, hotel stays, and other travel expenses. Without them, international travel could become more expensive and harder to manage. You might need to carry cash, which is not only risky, but also inconvenient. It's also important to think about the long-term impact on innovation. Credit cards have been around for decades, and over time, they've evolved to include new technologies like contactless payments and rewards programs. If credit cards were banned, Would we still see that kind of innovation? Or would we move on to something new? People have started using digital wallets and other technologies to replace credit cards, but it's unclear whether these options could ever offer the same level of convenience and security. What's next? Would we see new forms of money or payment methods emerge? On a personal level, credit cards allow for a certain kind of freedom. The ability to pay for things without having to worry about cash in your wallet or carry a checkbook is something most people take for granted. If credit cards were banned, people would have to go back to the basics, cash and checks. For some, this might be an easy transition, but for others, it could be a nightmare. Cash is bulky and checks take time to process. Digital payments like Apple Pay and Google Pay would become more important, but what about the people who don't have smartphones or aren't tech-savvy? They could be left behind in a world that's moving quickly toward digital payments. However, there could be some upsides to banning credit cards. For one, people might become more financially responsible. Without the temptation of easily available credit, individuals might start saving up for the things they really need instead of buying them on a whim. This could lead to more mindful spending and less debt. People might also focus more on building their savings and financial security instead of depending on credit to get by. But there are problems too. Think about all the businesses that rely on credit cards for their day-to-day transactions. Without them, there would be fewer options for customers, and many businesses would need to find new ways to operate. Some might even go out of business if they can't find a reliable alternative to credit cards. The global economy could slow down as people and companies adjust to the changes, and unemployment could rise as businesses struggle to keep up with the demand for new payment systems. The question is, could we find a way to replace credit cards without causing chaos? If credit cards were banned, we would need to find a solution that works for everyone. From individuals to businesses to banks. Digital payment systems like mobile wallets and bank transfers could become more popular, but not everyone would be on board with this transition. It might take years for these systems to become mainstream enough to replace credit cards entirely. In the end, the banning of credit cards could create a world where people are more mindful of their spending and perhaps less in debt. However, it could also lead to confusion, financial instability, and economic struggles. What do you think? Would it be a good thing if credit cards were banned worldwide, or would the challenges outweigh the benefits? If you enjoyed this idea, make sure to like and subscribe.